Hello friends. I want to talk about my current 6-box setup and how I use it on the TLP servers for Everquest. This used to be a 3-box setup, and I still think 3-boxing is completely viable, and I still don't really support using a bunch of the same class and trying to overpower content through, let's say a bunch of mages. But there have been a bunch of nerfs to kind of reduce the effectiveness of that approach, which I dig. But I wanted to do an update video, and it's going to be self-contained so that you don't have to watch the other one. It talks about the changes that I made to the UI to make it more functional, to include other humans in the group, to control more classes, and to reduce the complexity of the setup so that you can kind of scale it out infinitely to a number of characters that you care to use. So talk about I guess 4 cornerstones to how this works. The first is kind of information or simplified information about each character that is critical to managing 5 characters besides the one you're playing. The things that you need to know, in my opinion: their health, their mana, what they're targeting, what they're casting, and whether or not they're sitting or standing. So how I accomplish this for each of the characters is not to have some baby version of the screen across the bottom and somehow like divine what's going on there. It's to have a kind of truncated view of what each character is doing. So I have a little name placard, their target placard, what they're casting, and a small hotbar associated with each character on the main screen of my user, or the main screen of the main character that I'm playing. So how do I achieve this? Well, there's a nifty feature called VideoFX in ISBoxer, and that's what I'm using to do this. There's a nifty feature called VideoFX, and I keep one VideoFX source from each character. In the case of the cleric, there's 2, and we'll discuss that as another cornerstone to how I set this up. But what that means is this is my druid. If I swap over using Alt-2 to swap over to my druid, this is the VideoFX source. It's in the same place everywhere on the UI on all my characters that are not my main tank. But essentially this is Misu, this is the target placard, this is where the cast bar goes right here. This is who they're targeting. Target of target is not in the setup, but I keep it here. And it's the same across every single character. So they're all in the same place. And I used a nifty trick is if you bring up copy layout, you set up one character, then you use copy layout to essentially copy the layout for each, to each character so that it's not different across all of them. Pretty darn helpful, really. Okay, so back to this. So that's the first cornerstone here. The second is if I click, or a part of this, the second is if I click on this, I'm using repeater pass-through. So I can actually click on, let's say, shield of blades or barbs or whatever the hell this is called now. I can actually cast the few spells that I deem really critical directly from this little setup here. And if I click on, let's say I want to cast Shield of Barbs on this pet here. If I click on this, it targets Shield of Barbs, and I'll talk about my assist and follow macros after this, and it will cast it from here. It'll cast Sal. This is a Jazak escape staff, so it'll actually sucker my group. I use this all the time as a quick way to sucker, and so on. That's sort of number 1. This sort of heads-up display for each character that I import onto the main screen, and it's a way of kind of dealing with it. So that you know what's going on each of them. Guessing who they're targeting, what they're casting, and what their current status is really hard. So the second thing, which I already touched on, is this hotbar. So we have this clickable hotbar. I have a number of things on here that are really all about the status of the character and what I can do with them. So in this case, I have a sit-stand toggle, and this is so I can, stand everybody up and sit everybody back down. And this is a very handy way of meditating, so you're not toggling between characters as they're casting spells. You can cast let's say a volley of spells on of a bob tick here, so I'll cast a volley of spells, Wildfire, Ice Comet from these guys, Only those two characters stand up. But if I want to have them meditate again, I need something besides the sit stand toggle, because if I do sit stand toggle for all the characters, it's going to alternate the people that we're casting. So I don't want that. Really what I want is the ability to stand everybody up and then sit everybody back down so they're all in the same state. So managing that state via these hotbars is very critical. It's in conjunction with keybinds. So I use the numkey pad to control essentially most things to do with the character states like this. So I really only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 key bindings, and that's kind of nice. Going through them really quickly, the ones that control their states, I use 7 for sit stand toggle, so I can sit and stand. I use shift 7 to just stand them all up, and that's really just a stand macro. So that it doesn't toggle them, so that if I've got people in different states, I can match their state by having them all stand and then have them all sit back down by using the toggle. The next thing is follow. So if I stand everybody up and I hit 8 on my numkey pad, it will follow the character that I currently have on the main screen. And if I go to Misu and I do the same thing, if I hit 8 a few times, it will follow Misu. And then I have assist. So if I target Flux here on Misu, everybody else has Misu targeted because of the following we just did. If I hit 9 on the keypad, it will have everybody target my currently selected toon's target and have everyone switch to that target. This is helpful for everything. This is how you control your characters. Follow, assist, stand, and sit. Literally, that's it. And then my normal WASD keys for controlling this character. So let's sit everybody back down. Switch back over to Uggams. Actually, let me get them back in a little formation here because it's prettier to look at. That's the auto follow half circle of doom, by the way. Be very careful of that in dungeons. You have to be intimately familiar with how auto follow works to make this thing work. So I'm going to put them in this little formation here. Sit them back down. Okay, so there's that. Those 3 keys, sit, stand, assist, and follow, are really what I use as the cornerstones. Now I also have I do not control each of these characters individually 9/10 of the time when I'm killing random stuff. So if I run out and I'm pulling something and I pull it back and I want these guys all to nuke, let me fix this really quickly. I had my mage not nuking because I was saving his mana for Koth due to the strategy I was using. So call the hero. So if I assist on the target, let's say, which is this pet, and I want everybody to nuke it, I have 2 hotkeys. One set nukes from my mage and wizard, and the other set pet attacks from my enchanter, theft of thoughts from my enchanter, and then nukes from my druid. So if I hit arrow key left and right, which are what those 2 hotkeys are, it's going to nuke from all my characters and pet attack from all my characters on the current targets they have selected. So I'm running in, I assist Uggams, and I have everybody nuked by doing left, right. And that will start casting Scars of Sigil, Ice Comet, and Wildfire from those 3 characters. And if that thing was Theft of Thoughtable, I'd be casting Theft of Thought on that thing as well. And that is, essentially 9/10 of the time, if you're just doing regular DPS on a target, you're not going to necessarily want to change things up all that often. My wizard has a special case in that 2 things. 1, range spells are more efficient for even single target use. If you don't have other mobs in camp that you're going to break mez on, I actually will cast that manually through this hotbar and then start the DPS rotation from the rest of the guys. Or yeah, that's basically what I do. I also will click harvest. So I don't have like hotkeys to like harvest on my wizard. I'll click it, and this allows me to like keep a relatively small number of hotkeys, and that's good because you're going to forget them. And if your hotkeys are for critical actions and you start forgetting them, it's just bad. Oh God, it's starting to snow, which is a terrible noise. I don't know if I can even lower it on the spot. So let me just lower all the volume. So essentially, assist, there's DPS rotation, and you don't even really need to split DPS between your character. Like, you don't have to have two hotkeys for doing that. I just did because early on I was power leveling this wizard and mage because my druid and my enchanter were part of essentially my original group, and they were higher level. Well, I didn't want to nuke from my druid and my enchanter all the time, so yeah. I didn't. I split them up into two groups, and I just, in ISBoxer, if I show you how that works, pretty straightforward. Keymaps, always on. I go to all damage without cleric. I've changed these somewhat. It's literally sending the 4 key to these windows. So if I go to like my wizard, the 4 key is a damage macro, and it casts 2 and 3. 2 is Ice Comet, 3 is Drought of Jiva when Ice Comet's on cooldown. That's it. That's the only thing. So it sends 4 to this character, and that's what my right key does. So if I target Kebab here and I hit right, it's casting Ice Comet. If I spam right, it will cast Scars of Sigil again as soon as it's available on the mage, and it will cast Drought of Jiva as soon as the global cooldown's up on the other. So it's essentially just kind of spam nuking, if you will. I don't click it, it doesn't happen. There's no key repeating here or anything like that. There's no automation. It's just simply using a hotkey to trigger actions on multiple windows. That's basically it. So it sends 4 to everybody. And the same is true for my Chanter. I have this pet attack here, and then there was a cast 7, which is Theft of Thought, but I don't have that up right now because I was doing a special setup. And then the Druid's 4 is Wildfire, which is not very complicated. So there's sort of a damage rotation. Oh, that's gross looking. This is what ogres look like. It's really ugly. So the other things that happen very often when a fight starts, I want to Tash, Mallow, Snare, and Slow, right? So I have an initial macro that essentially sends the same kind of style of hotkeys to each of these characters. So in the case of Misu, it snares with my whatever this thing is, Earring of Woven Bark or some crap, right? So this says snare. I could be using ensnare, but this is free, and I like to use the earring just because whatever. It casts snare. Flux will cast slow, which in this case it's supposed to be here instead of rune, I believe. Let me just check. Yeah, 6 and 8 is Tash. So I have this macro here. It's called the initial macro, and it casts Tash and slow. And then Misu will use snare, and you'll notice they're on the same slot. Shift 4, and actually it's on a different slot here. So in ISBoxer, if I bring that up, hotkey up initial rotation. If I check this out, it sends Shift 4 to the 3rd slot, which is my Chanter, Shift 2 to the Druid, which is snare, and then I don't know why I have 2 of these things here. Go ahead and delete one of them because they don't matter. That doesn't matter. Save it. And then Zethu has Mallow, which is in slot 1. So if I go to, again, we're targeting Kebab here, and if I hit up on my keypad down here, it casts Tash immediately, Malison and Snare, then it starts to cast Forlorn Deeds, and that's sort of an initial macro. If honestly, if I'm not slowing a mob because it's too weak, I'm not casting Tash and Mallow and all that stuff on it either. But sometimes when I've got 2 Clinging Darknesses in on Uggams here, and we're kind of we've got pretty good initial aggro on Ink, I will literally assist Uggams and then hit up, and it will cast Tash, Mallow, Snare, and Slow, and that kind of sets you up for success for the rest of the fight there. On a named, I almost always do that. Sometimes the reason why I have Slow here and Tash here on my little keypad there is because sometimes I just want to slow something. I don't want to mallow it. I don't want to do all the rest of that stuff. I don't want to snare it. Snare actually has a pretty good sizable piece of aggro there, and if it's some named mob, maybe I'm not snaring it. So I'll slow it just by clicking on this button directly. I'll interrupt that before it casts. So that's one piece. So we've got the initial damage stuff, and it casts multiple spells from each character. We've got the initial rotation, which is Tash Slow, Snare, Mallow, and then, you know, depending on what your needs are and what your group's setup is, that might be different. That might be, let's say you had a shaman instead of a druid. Okay, well, you cast Mallow and slow. You cast Mallow and Slow from the shaman. You cast Tash from the enchanter, and you'll just deal with snares using Clinging Darkness, or if you have a ranger in your group, you snare from him, so on. So I set it up into kind of steady state ongoing DPS, this initial piece, and then the last one that I have set up, which is a little bit specific to my setup, but it's just to give you a sense of, you know, how things work and what you ought to think about key binding in terms of criticality. You know, things that are very critical, you might want to have a key bind instead of some little tiny button on your UI you have to click. I have my down arrow actually cast color slant, and then if I hit it again, it's not supposed to cast Gift of Pure Thought. It's supposed to, in this spot, if I have color skew, it will cast color skew. So color slant, color skew, all attached to my down arrow. And this really has to do with the fact that I need to recharm stuff all the time. And sometimes, you know, we're in an oh shit situation and stuff is relatively stunnable. So I'll actually just chain stun. So from a chanter, you know, it's useful for me to have my down arrow doing chain stuns. So that way, what I do usually, and you can do this a lot more sophisticated than I have, I'm generally manually controlling it. Let's say that this is a charm pet, Kebabab, and it's just broken. Well, I'll initially snare or stun. I'll switch to my chanter. I actually cast Tash on it. I hit stun again by hitting the down arrow. I switch to Zethu. I actually will mallow it. I'll come back here and I'll cast Boltrons at the same time and charm the thing. So it's basically stun, Tash, mallow, stun, charm, and that's how I deal with recharms. I could actually probably attach that to one button in ISBoxer that kind of does the whole thing, but there's enough variability in terms of, you know, you're getting hit by the charmed mob, and so if you're getting stunned and you're not actually getting your stun off, you're not getting your spell off, having all this stuff be in one long cast sequence doesn't seem right. So I basically control it manually, and it works out pretty darn well. So there's just some, you know, essentially think about the critical things you need to do in your group to make it flexible enough and keybind those. I also have tab target keybound for my chanter, so if I'm tabbing through things very quickly, there's no targets out here to tab target through, but my plus key on my num keypad tab targets with my chanter. My 3 key actually casts Glamour of Kintaz, which is my mez, and so I'm dealing with that. I find myself more and more lately just switching to the chanter for that situation and just kind of handling mezzes as I need to, tabbing through things. When I'm doing things like breaking into fear with one group, I find myself switching to the chanter to deal with stuff while, you know, let's say I'm pulling, there's 4 mobs incoming into camp, we're in fear. The first thing I'm killing is an imp. I cast Clinging Darkness on the SK to get some initial aggro, and then while that's casting, I'll swap over to the chanter and start tab mezzing. I'll swap back to the SK, click Divine Light on the on Uggams because he's taking quite a bit of damage while I was dealing with those tab mezzes. I'll cast another Clinging Darkness and swap between the characters a little bit, and that kind of works. So that's generally it. I mean, you've got click healing, which, by the way, I didn't cover this. So if I look at the sources, I've got an extra source here for Math. Essentially, Math has a source over her party frame, which is my cleric. I import that onto my SK screen with that VideoFX source stuff. I set up 5 click bars. And click bars are a special thing in ISBoxer, again, that allows you to create a button, and a button that triggers a set of keys to get broadcast, right? So in this case, all it is an invisible button that sits over the top of each party member. In this case, it's F2, F3, F4, F5, F6, and the ability to heal them. So if I go ahead and click on Uggams here, it's actually clicking an ISBoxer Click Bar. It targets Uggams, Misu, Flux, Zerath, Zathu. And all that's doing is when I click on that, it broadcasts F2 to my cleric. If I right click on it, it broadcasts, guess what? It broadcasts, what is it, 3? Yeah, 3, the 3 key. If I right click on it, it broadcasts the 3 key to start casting Divine Light. This sets up click healing. That's another kind of cornerstone, if you will, to this setup. The other nice thing about this is that unlike, you know, oh, I'm going to have a hotkey that heals every individual group member by name, is it means I can actually include other people in the group, which I do on a semi-regular basis, right? I have a friend that I play with all the time. His character is in the group. I still need to be able to heal them. Doing it this way, it's just based on who's in the group. I can raid with these guys and swap in, you know, people who are not, you know, one of my characters, and it doesn't like require them to be named in some macro somewhere. So click healing is pretty nice. What else? I have a hotkey specifically for healing my enchanter during recharms. I hit 2. Targets Flux, cast Divine Light. And I cast that almost immediately on hearing the break charm audio alert. Audio alerts sort of outside the scope of this, but audio alerts are definitely helpful. If you go into EQ, actions, audio triggers, there's none on my SK because there's nothing that fancy going on with the SK. But on my enchanter, for instance, I've got audio triggers for Boltron's wearing off, Instill wearing off, which is no longer useful because Instill's not the root I'm using anymore. Tash wearing off, starting to appear, and then when a mob starts to cast Gate, and then Allure wearing off. All kind of charm related or just kind of things wearing off, and so on. So audio alerts are nice because you're not on that window, so you don't see that your charm's fading, right? So what does that mean? I've got this thing. So it makes a noise that is going to scare the shit out of me in most situations. I immediately start hitting down for color slant. I swap over, I tash it, I hit down again for the next color skew, swap over here, hit mallow, and so on. So it's kind of using audio alerts to trigger the actions that you need to deal with. So there's that. So click healing. Something I didn't describe is follow and assist. So if I go over to ISBoxer, I have set it up so I can follow and assist any person. So how do I do that? If I go into ISBoxer, I've created a key map that's only valid for one character. So in this case, it's Flux. That means if Flux is driving. So if I have Flux up and he's driving, these key maps are active. So what do I have? Follow and assist. And I have that for each character: Misu, Uggam, Zerath, Zeph, Maf. Let's open one of these and take a look at what they are. /tar space Maf, enter, and then broadcast 8. This goes to all other windows besides Maf, and what it's saying is target Maf, hit enter, and then broadcast the 8 key. What's the 8 key? 8's follow target. So I've just targeted Maf and I've followed on every single thing. And I'm not using a macro or one macro each doing this. I'm literally, in the case of Flux, it's going to say /target Flux. It's sending those keystrokes over and then doing that. I can switch over to Misu, hit it a few times, they'll start following Misu. Uggams, hit a few times, they're following Uggams. I do the same tactic for /assist. The only funky thing that you have to watch out for is, unfortunately, there is no /follow name. You have to target them and then follow them. And there's actually a delay between you typing /target so-and-so and it actually happening. It's like 100 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds, something like that. It's not transactional in that way, and so you actually have to hit the hotkey a few times to get it to work, because the /follow will fail the first time, and I'll show you how, or I'll show you an example of that. I'll get everybody to target Kebabab. I'll hit my 8 key, which, oh, gotta break follow first. everybody's targeting Kebabob. They're not following. If I hit my 8 key, they're all going to target Uggums, but they're not going to follow them. If I hit it again, they're going to start following them. So there you go. That's the only gotcha. Slash assist works the same way. If I open up one of those slash assists, it's slash ass, which is short for assist, space, math, enter. And that's literally the same as broadcasting these keystrokes to everybody. Slash assist math. Hit enter. And then it'll do that. Math is currently targeting Uggum, so I target myself. There are different ways to do that. There's simpler ways to do that. You can have it key off one character, but that's how I chose to do it. What else? I think that might be it. So I think those are the main concepts. Just kind of, you know, think about your comp a little bit. Make sure your comp's going to work. Make sure you can include other users, other people in the group, because it kind of sucks if you're just like a loner. What the hell? That's kind of stupid. And yeah, that's it. One thing to note is I have one melee, and that's because I'm not using MQ2. You can box multiple melee, but you have to use, you know, illegal third-party programs to get, you know, the other melee to stick on the target. It's too hard to manage auto follow and to stay on one side of the target, and it doesn't work in late game. You can't, like, you know, run one character through the mobs that are going to have a frontal cone AE or something like that, or going to riposte and kill you. But people who you see boxing multiple melee are almost certainly using the slash stick command from the MQ2 move utils package. I'm familiar with all that stuff. I know how to compile it. I generally don't use it. I'm not against using it if you're using the parts that don't cheat. I don't think slash stick is cheating. I think it's a better follow that works on mobs. I do think warping, having track on any class, and having access to a map that shows you where mobs are all horrible and shouldn't be in the game and shouldn't even be options. And I think there should be a way to discern and make a portion of that program legal, because it'd be nice to have a rogue in the group or a monk in the group that could deal with that stuff, but I don't for that reason, so I don't use it. And that's really it. I think I'll make a video. Last time I made a video of me 3-boxing Mistmore. I'll probably make a video of me breaking into Fear with this setup, because it's a little more advanced and, you know, requires a bunch of CC, and the mobs hit kind of hard and have a lot of hit points and so on. So not as hard as it would have been if we were all level 50, but there you go. So that's all I got for you. Thanks.